Okay, so we'll come back this way. So there is. Now I'm all discombobulated. I was doing a reading, and the computer decided it didn't want to do the reading anymore. I think Comcast heard me talking about them. That's what it is. So Byron Allen versus Comcast. Comcast and Charter. So Byron Allen owns entertainment studios. His programming is on not Netflix, AT&T, Verizon, all the carriers. Comcast is the one he is not on, so he sued Comcast for racial bias. Comcast said it's not racial, it's just what they call it. Capacity constraints is what they call it. Because they said we didn't have any space for your Cars TV. This is what the programming is called. Cars TV, Justice TV, and what was the other one? I think like Kids TV or something like that. So he's got all these little stations that he wants to put on Comcast, and Comcast said no. Meanwhile, when they said no because of capacity constraints, they went with a bunch of white-owned companies, and so he's claiming racial bias. And also, a little footnote, when Comcast bought Universal, or NBC Universal, or CNBC Universal, whatever it was called, they had to make a pledge in 2011. This was under Obama, so they had to make a pledge to the federal government. Had to have at least 4 African American owned entertainment companies on their networks or on their services. Because Byron Allen, I think he bought the Weather Channel too, but he has entertainment studios. They produce all these different types of shows and things, and they're on everybody: Dish, DirecTV, AT&T, Verizon, except Comcast. And so he is now saying racial bias, and it is now in the Supreme Court. Will he win? So when they had to make the pledge, Comcast, to the government, they already had Aspire, which is by Magic Johnson. So they don't need black programs. They need black-owned networks on their service. That's what they needed. So they had Aspire by Magic Johnson. They had Revolt by Sean Combs. And so then they acquired something called Afro and something, I forget what the other one's called, but they got 4. And so Byron Allen wants to be number 5, and they said no. And it was rumored that one of the executives at Comcast said, we're not trying to create any more Bob Johnsons. And Bob Johnson was the man who started BET. So there is this racial tension between Byron Allen's Comcast and another company called Charter. So Comcast versus Byron Allen. I think he's suing them for $20 million. I think this is more about the principle than it is anything else. So 2 of Swords. We're stuck somewhere. 7 of Wands, defending. So we are in, this is the appeals, has gone to the Supreme Court. So I assume he's already lost at least once. 9 of Swords, the anxiety around it all. The Moon, so something hidden, something secret. King of Swords, not sure who that is. 9 of Wands, so a long battle. Princess of Pentacles. Now the principle is to protect the racial interest, or I guess not to have a racist agenda, but it's all sort of centered around money as well, because he needs to be on these different networks or different companies or distributed by Comcast like he is AT&T and Verizon, so you can reach a better audience or bigger audience. Secrets are in the fears, though. With the moon and the high priestess, there's something hidden here we don't quite understand. And I don't want to assume that they have some sort of racist agenda or buts. Something's there. Not Ten of Pentacles. Seven of Cups. Yeah, there's a haze. The Hermit. King of Cups. Because mind you, Comcast has some black companies, but that they distribute through their service. But two of them were sort of forced by the government because they had to make a pledge to the government in order to acquire NBC Universal. You have to put at least 4, and they put 4. Or you have to have at least 4, so they added 2 more, 4 total. So they did business with Magic Johnson and Sean Combs, who was Puff Daddy, if you want to call him that. They did business with those two, but nobody else. So is it just you, Byron, or is it just them? So the hopes is the Ten of Swords. So will he win? He hopes to skewer them. Like he really hopes to really stick it to them. This is personal now. Seven of Swords. So there's a strategy. Ten of Wands. He may be trying to add more of a burden to Comcast, as in sort of hit them in the reputation more than anything. It's kind of like but that was a hoax, but I'm going to say it anyway. Tommy Hilfiger, the designer, back in the day, his clothes were extremely popular with the urban crowd. Urban means black, but the urban crowd. And there came a story. I think it was just one of those hoax type stories, but the story nonetheless, because I never really looked into it, where he said, well, no, the story said that he said he didn't make his clothes for black people. And so next thing you know, black people everywhere stopped wearing Tommy Hilfiger practically overnight. He went on Oprah. Oprah was supposed to be the salvation back in the day. And that didn't save him either, because she flat out asked him, did you say that you did not make your clothes for black people? He said, of course not, or absolutely not, or something like that. And now he makes high-end clothes, and so he has switched his market. So I think what Byron may be trying to do strategically right now is hit him in the reputation. And I call it hoax stories because they did the same about Michael Jordan. They said Michael Jordan did make his shoes for black people. And the story was made up. Because, of course, he didn't say that. So, Six of Swords is in your warning. So, there, I think you might be losing this one. There's no transition. There is news. And Princess of Cups, surprise, surprise, separation and heartbreak. So, in a surprise decision, I think you lose. Because what they are up against is trying to prove intent. So that's really hard to do. So you have to prove that, not Xfinity, Comcast, which makes Xfinity, you have to prove that Comcast is not putting your programming on simply because you are black. Instead of maybe your program is just not something they want. Because they can point to Magic Johnson and Sean Combs and Afro TV and that other one and say, look, we have these guys. So it's not that we don't like black people. We just don't like you. So I pulled it up. Let me get because that other name was going to bother me. Crap, now it's gone. There it is. Yeah, he has Pets TV, Cars TV, Justice Central TV, Comedy TV. These are all things that are distributed by Entertainment Studios. And so, Clio TV. I was never going to get that. So, Comcast has Clio TV, Afro, whatever Afro is. I've never seen that one. And Revolts, which is by Sean Combs, which also distributes The Breakfast Club, and Aspire by Magic Johnson. So they didn't go get TV One. They didn't go get, I think Centric is owned by BET, but they didn't try to go get these things. So let's go behind the veil and see if it is indeed racial bias. The court is not going to side with you, I believe. It would be nice if they did, but then again, you can't just hurl your racism, I'm suing you for $20 million at people, and then just win in the court, even though that baker who wouldn't bake the cake for the gay people, for the gay couple that went in there. And first of all, stay out his nasty ass floor anyway. But it sets a precedent, a dangerous one. So anyway, back on this and get off subject real fast. Is this about race? Did you not do a deal with Byron Allen because of race? So there is at least something personal, because there's the thrown out in the cold part. And then collaborations, celebratory collaborations, so like events of some sort. Wheel of Fortune, Prince of Cups, Six of Swords. Strength. Princess of Pentacle. I think it's more personal than it is anything else. It's not racial, I don't think. Four of Cups. Prince of Pentacles. Nine of Pentacles. I think it's just, for whatever reason, I mean, he's not the richest man in the world, but they fear you. So it kind of gives a little credence, though, to what they said about Bob Johnson. That they don't want to create any more Bob Johnsons, and Bob Johnson was the guy who started BET. Who then sold it to Viacom. I think this is personal. They don't like you. The man who bought the Weather Channel. I think whoever these executives are, because it's not necessarily Comcast as a company, it's these people. They don't like you. It's personal. They, for whatever reason, fear your wealth. But like I said, I don't think he's just the richest guy in the world, but how much is he worth? $400 million? Yeah, I just don't think it's that. I mean, I don't think it's a racial thing. I think it's kind of that. Are these executives, let's be more specific, are these executives not doing business with Byron Allen because of his race? Well, I stand corrected. I think it might be. Well, it's still personal, but I think there's some... Because the devil has shown himself now around people, balance, and regret. And let's notice in this card, unlike most Five of Cups, all of his cups have fallen over instead of having the two left. So this is like nothing left. Yeah, because when I picked this up, it said yes, but I wasn't going to stop there because... So it is personal, and personally because of you. Again, we get the thrown out in the cold thing. And when I asked a long time ago, because I asked you all actually, what would be good cards for racism, and this is kind of what we came up with, and both of them just came up. Because this is being shunned, and then of course the devil. So you still have to prove that in court, which is where I think you run into the problem. Not to mention, well, anyway. So I don't think he's going to win that one. Sad to say.